what else can post-traumatic growth look like? I love post-traumatic growth. I can talk about trauma and educate you on trauma forever and ever, but I really want to spend more time on post-traumatic growth because, like I said earlier, it's just not talked about as much. My name is Nicole. I'm a licensed clinician, and we're talking about everyday things that impact our mental health and fitness, and we're starting on the deep end with trauma. Like I said, I don't want to harp on the trauma part of things. I do want to really kind of talk more about the growth part of things. So, we're thinking about childhood traumas and coming out of childhood traumas and being able to help others. And, but what about adulthood? What about when things happen when you're an adult? It's not a chronic trauma. It's just a thing that happens and you think you can kind of get over it, and maybe you did, but maybe you didn't. And maybe you're just shoving it down and really not addressing the changes and the issues that have arisen from it. Arose. And I think something that's key here too is that it doesn't always have to result in you doing something for the public, right? You don't have to start a nonprofit for every type of trauma that you've encountered in your lifetime. However, post-traumatic growth could also look like, hey, I know somebody who got killed in war. Or, I had a life and death encounter at some point while I was driving, maybe a near-miss car accident or, something along those lines. And so maybe because I've had this brush with death and I've had this strong response to it, maybe I'll become a better person for the sake of my family or for the sake of myself, because maybe I want a family one day, or my family of origin, my relationships with them are a little bit strained, and I realize that life is too short to let that happen. And so I'm going to work on myself and see if there can be relationships salvaged. And those types of things are also post-traumatic growth, because pre-trauma, that would not have even been a thought in your mind, or it would not have been put into action. Whereas post-trauma, now you're like, hey, you know what? Like, there are other priorities that I could be focusing on rather than, whatever it was that you had been focusing on up until that point. And so, post-traumatic growth can happen anytime. Like I said in a previous video, it doesn't have to wait for you to develop post-traumatic stress disorder. It can happen as a kind of like an immediate response to the trauma. And usually that happens when people are a little bit more higher on like the resilience scale, the positive psychology, psychological flexibility, able to kind of like change some of the thoughts that they have about themselves and the world, and the perception of the event and what the event means, because that's where the trauma response comes from, is when our perception of the event and the meaning that we assign to the event is in conflict with the thoughts and feelings that we have about ourselves and the world around us.